You're nothing but a temporary replacement. Margaret's voice echoed through our living room as she waved a photo of Emma, my husband's ex-girlfriend, in my face. Once you're gone, my son will finally marry the woman he's meant to be with. I stood there, my hands steady as I continued folding laundry, refusing to give my mother-in-law the reaction she craved. At 32, I'd spent the last 5 years learning that the best response to Margaret's outbursts was calm indifference. My name is Olivia, and I never expected to find myself in this situation. When I married David, I thought his mother's initial coldness would thaw over time. Instead, it had crystallized into something harder and more bitter, especially since Emma moved back to town 3 months ago. "Did you hear me?" Margaret demanded, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against our coffee table. "Emma's father just made partner at his law firm. She comes from the right kind of family, unlike you." I placed the folded towels in the basket, keeping my movements deliberate and unhurried. "Is there something specific you needed today, Margaret?" "David won't be home from his business trip until tomorrow." Her eyes narrowed. "Actually, there is. Emma's lease is up next month, and this house would be perfect for her and David to start their new life together. I've already spoken to my son about it." That made me pause. "You spoke to David about giving our house to Emma?" Margaret's smile turned predatory. "This house belongs to the family, dear. You're not family. You're just keeping Emma's place warm." She pulled out an envelope from her designer handbag. "These are divorce papers. Save everyone the drama and sign them." I felt a familiar ache in my chest, but it wasn't from pain. It was from anger carefully contained over years of subtle jabs and not-so-subtle manipulations. Margaret had never forgiven me for marrying David after he and Emma broke up 6 years ago. In her eyes, I'd stolen her son's perfect future. "Where did you get divorce papers?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Emma's father's firm drew them up. Everything's there. You'll get a reasonable settlement if you sign quickly and quietly." She pushed the envelope across the table. I picked it up, noting the law firm's letterhead. "And David knows about this. He will once he gets home. Emma's already planning to meet him for dinner tomorrow night." Margaret's voice dripped with satisfaction. "You must have noticed how distant he's been lately." "Why do you think that is?" She wasn't entirely wrong. David had been distant, working late, taking more business trips. But Margaret didn't know everything. She didn't know about the conversations I'd had with our family lawyer 2 months ago when I first noticed David's changed behavior. She didn't know about the documentation I'd been quietly gathering. And most importantly, she didn't know about the house papers. "You know what's funny, Margaret?" I said, setting the envelope down unopened. "You've spent so much time planning my exit that you never bothered to check the property records." Her smug expression faltered slightly. "What are you talking about?" I walked to my home office, Margaret following close behind. From my desk drawer, I pulled out a folder, one I prepared for exactly this kind of moment. "This house doesn't belong to your family anymore. It hasn't for the past 3 months. "That's ridiculous," she scoffed. "This house has been in our family for generations. David's grandfather built it." I laid out the documents one by one. David signed over his share of the house to me completely 3 months ago, right before his behavior started changing. He said it was to simplify our assets. I met her eyes. Then last month, he tried to take out a second mortgage without my knowledge. The bank called me instead. Margaret's face went pale as she scanned the documents. This can't be legal." "It's perfectly legal," I assured her. "Just like the private investigator's reports documenting David's meetings with Emma over the past 2 months are legal. And the recordings of your conversations with her planning this little ambush. Those are legal too, since you had them in my house." Her hands began to shake. "You've been spying on us?" "No, Margaret. I've been protecting myself." "There's a difference." I gathered the documents back into the folder. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to take your divorce papers and leave. When David gets home tomorrow, he's going to find his own set of papers, real ones, drawn up by my lawyer." Margaret's composure cracked. "You vindictive little—" "And one more thing," I cut her off. "The next time you let yourself into my house without permission, I'm filing for a restraining order. The security cameras caught you using David's key to get in today." She stood there, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. For the first time in 5 years, Margaret was speechless. As she stormed out, slamming the door behind her, I sank into my office chair and let out a shaky breath. The confrontation I'd been preparing for was over, but the real battle was just beginning. Tomorrow, David would come home to find divorce papers of my own. Papers that would force him to face the consequences of his choices. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. Just got Margaret's voicemail. Everything okay? I smiled, thinking of the security camera footage automatically uploading to my cloud drive, the property records safely filed away, and the look on Margaret's face when she realized she'd underestimated me. Everything's fine, I texted back. Just following the plan. The house felt quieter now, but not in an empty way. For the first time since Emma's return, I felt in control. My terms, I replied. The house stays with me. It's already legally mine. The investment accounts will split according to contribution, which my lawyer has already documented. You can keep your family's precious heirlooms, but the art collection we built together will be sold and divided. You can't do this, he protested weakly. I already have. I stood up, walking to the kitchen to refill my coffee. You have 1 hour to pack what you need for now. The rest we can arrange through our lawyers. And if I refuse? I turned back to him, allowing myself a small smile. Then I send copies of these photos to your firm's partners. I'm sure they'd be interested to know you've been meeting with a competitor's daughter during your supposed business trips. His face went from red to white. You wouldn't. The David I married? He would have known better than to doubt me. I set my mug down carefully. But you're not that man anymore, are you? A heavy silence fell between us, filled with the weight of broken promises and betrayed trust. Finally, David spoke, his voice hollow. Does Mom know about this? She knows enough, I replied. She came here expecting to bully me into accepting her plans for your future with Emma. Instead, she learned that her perfect son isn't as clever as she thought. He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This isn't over, Olivia. Actually, it is. I nodded toward the stairs. Your hour starts now. As David disappeared upstairs, I heard my phone buzz again. A text from Margaret. David's home. Enjoy your last hour in my family's house. I took a photo of the divorce papers on the table and sent it to her with a simple message. He's packing now. Enjoy your dinner with Emma tonight. The next hour passed in tense silence, broken only by David's movements upstairs and the occasional slam of drawers. When he finally came down, 2 suitcases in hand, he paused at the door. You know Mom won't let this go, he warned. She'll fight you on this. I thought about the security footage, the documented evidence of Margaret's harassment, and the restraining order papers my lawyer had ready to file. She's welcome to try, I replied. After David left, I walked through the house, my house, noting the empty spaces where his things had been. In our bedroom, his closet stood half empty, but instead of feeling lost, I felt lighter. On his nightstand, he'd left his house key and the framed photo from our wedding day. My phone buzzed one last time. Another text from Margaret. This isn't over. We'll see who's laughing when Emma's living in that house. I took a moment to compose my response, thinking of all the evidence safely stored with my lawyer, the security system I upgraded last month, and the cameras that had captured every one of Margaret's unauthorized entries. You're right about one thing, I wrote back. This isn't over. But I'm not laughing, Margaret. I'm just getting started. I blocked her number before she could respond, then called my lawyer to update her on the morning's events. As I hung up, I caught my reflection in the window, shoulders straight, head high, no tears in sight. The woman staring back at me wasn't a victim or a replacement. She was a survivor who had seen the storm coming and built her walls accordingly. David and Margaret had underestimated me, seeing only what they wanted to see. A quiet wife who would step aside when told. A temporary placeholder in their perfect family narrative. They never bothered to look deeper, to see the strength that had been building with every slight, every dismissal, every manipulative move. Their mistake wasn't in wanting me gone. It was in assuming I would leave quietly. 2 weeks after David's departure, I sat in my lawyer's office reviewing the final divorce settlement. Emma's father had tried to intervene, throwing his legal firm's weight around. But my documentation was ironclad. The house remained mine. The assets were divided as I'd specified, and most importantly, I maintained my dignity throughout the entire process. Mrs. Patterson is here to see you, my lawyer's assistant announced, a hint of warning in her voice. I didn't need to turn around to know Margaret had arrived, right on schedule. Hello, Margaret, I said calmly, not bothering to stand as she stormed into the office, designer handbag clutched like a weapon. "This ends now," she declared, slamming a stack of papers onto the desk. "I have proof that David was coerced into transferring the house to you. We'll take this to court if we have to." My lawyer, Sandra, merely raised an eyebrow. "Please have a seat, Mrs. Patterson. We've been expecting this." I opened my briefcase and pulled out a USB drive. "Before you continue with your threats, you might want to watch this." Sandra connected the drive to her computer and turned the screen so Margaret could see. The security footage played clearly. Margaret using her copy of David's key to enter my house multiple times when we weren't home. Her going through my papers. Her meetings with Emma in my living room planning their takeover. "There's more," I added quietly. "Every conversation where you discussed using Emma's father's influence to force me out. Every time you threatened me. Every plan you made to manipulate the situation." Margaret's face lost its color. "You can't use that. It's invasion of privacy." "In my own home?" I shook my head. "The cameras were legally installed and clearly visible. You chose to ignore them just like you chose to ignore my right to be there." "David was supposed to marry Emma," she whispered, her composure finally cracking. "They were perfect together. You were never supposed to last. And yet I'm the one sitting here with all the documentation, while your son is facing an ethics inquiry at his firm for using business trips to meet with a competitor." I leaned forward. "Would you like to know what happens next, Margaret?" She stared at me, silent for the first time since I'd known her. "You're going to sign these papers." I slid a document across the desk, agreeing to cease all contact with me. "The house keys you've copied will be returned. Any future communication will go through our lawyers. If you violate these terms, the restraining order I've prepared goes into effect immediately." "You can't erase me," she spat. "I'm still his mother." "Yes, you are," I agreed. "And you can continue to be his mother without attempting to destroy my life. The choice is yours." Sandra handed her a pen. "I'd think carefully about your next move, Mrs. Patterson. Miss Thompson's documentation is extensive." Margaret's hand shook as she signed, her perfect manicure catching the office light. As she stood to leave, she paused at the door. "He loved you, you know, before Emma came back." "No, Margaret," I replied softly. "He loved the idea of me, the quiet wife who wouldn't challenge him. That's not who I am anymore." After she left, Sandra turned to me with a smile. "You handled that perfectly. Are you sure you don't want to press charges for the unauthorized entries?" I shook my head. "This is enough. Sometimes the best revenge is simply showing people who you really are." That evening I walked through my house, truly mine now, and began making changes I'd always held back on. The formal living room Margaret had insisted we maintain became my art studio. David's study transformed into a library filled with books he'd always found too frivolous. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Emma, I hope you're happy with yourself. You've ruined everything." I blocked the number without responding. Some battles weren't worth fighting, especially with someone who'd been as manipulated by Margaret as I once was. A week later, I received an envelope from David. Inside was a letter of apology and a check, his attempt to make things right. I donated the money to a domestic abuse shelter, knowing they could help other women find their strength. As I sat on my porch that evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in colors Margaret would have found too bold for her perfect family image, I felt at peace. The house around me wasn't just a building anymore. It was a testament to standing my ground, to being stronger than anyone expected. Sometimes life's greatest victories come not from fighting the loudest, but from being prepared for the quiet battles. Margaret had wanted a war, but what she got instead was a lesson in underestimating the wrong person. I picked up my phone and deleted the last photo of David and me together. Some endings aren't really endings at all. They're just new beginnings in disguise. And this beginning, it was all mine.